Hello and welcome to the Cinementalist podcast for Cinementalist.com. My name's Andy, sitting next to me is Floki, our bearded dragon mascot, and sitting opposite me is Liam. How's it going, dude?
Doing well, thanks, man. Yeah, the weather seems to be considerably improving on our end, so I went for a nice little jaunt around the block earlier.
Lovely.
Nice little walk. Well, I can't fucking do anything else, can I?
A little bit of perambulation.
Yeah, a little bit of perambulation, looking around at the wondrous sights of a very boring suburb.
Sounds beautiful.
Absolutely,
yes.
mate, yeah.
Speaking of things that have improved, hopefully, really hopefully, we've upgraded all our gear.
Have indeed.
So hopefully we sound a lot better than we normally do. Or something's gone terribly wrong with the setup. And when I listen back to this later, I'm going to cry. But
and if we don't, when we do get the forum installed, we can put a complaints box in.
Yeah. Even better, actually. If you go, some of our episodes on Spotify, I noticed someone clued me into this the other day, have some fucked up audio on them now, which is really cool.
Oh, really?
So I went and remastered them because Spotify's blown out the bass on a load of our early ones, which is really annoying. We sound like we're under the sea.
Oh, fuck.
So I went back and remastered the audio files, put them back up on Castos, which Spotify is linked to, and Spotify still hasn't uploaded the new ones. So I've been chatting to the Spotify engineers, who've been very helpful, actually, to be fair to them. And they said, oh yeah, basically it does this. Change the name of the file names and the scraper for the RSS feed. We'll do it at some point.
Wonderful.
So if you're listening to some of our old episodes and we sound really terrible, don't worry. It has been fixed. We're just waiting for Spotify to catch the fuck up.
So what's do we just both sound like we're sitting the inside of a giant tin drum or something?
I went back to listen to some of the old ones. I'm like, there's no way I mixed it like that. There's no fucking, I'm not deaf, you know.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I went back to have a look at them and they've been janked by the Spotify algorithm. So apologies for that. They should have been fixed on everything else. So Pocket Cast, etc. If you're listening on something other than Spotify, we should sound fine. But Spotify has janked up some of the old episodes. Hopefully, this one sounds really good because blimey, have we spent some money on this new gear. But we shall see.
Better fucking reap the benefits of it.
Yeah. Honestly, if this doesn't sound any good, I'm going to be so annoyed. Okay, well, on with the show then. Let's start off, as we always do, with a bit of film news this week, Liam. First thing I've got, Avatar The Last Airbender fans celebrate animated film announcement as the best news of the year. So this isn't Avatar, the James Cameron films. This is the cartoon that's incredibly popular. You heard of Avatar The Last Airbender?
Yeah, I remember seeing portions of the film where characters say to one another, I knew you were a bender from the moment I saw you.
Oh, that was the M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong one, wasn't
it? I'm aware that it was originally based on an animated series, I believe, or some sort of manga.
Yes, this is Avatar The Last Airbender, the animated series, which is hugely popular, is getting animated film. This was announced on Wednesday the 24th of February. Theatrical release movie based on the popular series, scheduled to start production later this year, so still a way off on this one. But the internet is very excited. I haven't watched the series. I probably should.
Let me know if it's any good, because you'll probably get there before I do.
I don't think there's actually that many episodes of it, weirdly.
No.
But it's got a huge cult following as one of the best animated sort of, designed for kids, but adults get a lot out of it as well, kind of thing. So I am sort of curious about it, and who knows, maybe the film will be good as well.
Maybe there'll be some stirring of obligation where I'll watch it because it's getting like a swelling of anticipation.
It's so highly rated, there must be something to it, so we'll get on that.
Yeah, that's a fair argument. I may well just check it out myself out of curiosity.
Indiana Jones 5 news in... sequels that have no business being made.
Oh my giddy arms.
This is from Cinema Blend. A new Indiana Jones movie is on the way. We've been assured of that much multiple times, and based on the most recent announcements, it will be going before cameras very soon. We know nothing about the movie beyond the fact that Harrison Ford will be back in the hat. However, if the script calls for it, there's somebody else willing to don the trademark fedora, and he's done it before. Sean Patrick Flannery starred in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles TV series in the early 90s and says that if the movie wants him, he'd be more than happy to return to the franchise. Don't we think that would be better overall, rather than de-aging Harrison Ford?
Well, Harrison Ford's going to be 80 next year.
Yeah.
So
I mean, good on it. He looks great for 80. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I believe the plan is not to do an 80-year-old Indiana Jones. It's to de-age him so he still looks like, the Indy everyone knows.
I think even Bruce Willis has stopped the Die Hard franchise at this point, and he's coming up for 66. So
yeah, I kind of don't believe that though. I think Bruce can be tempted by money.
Yeah. Actually, I'll retract that. I think you're correct.
But I mean, who knows? But Yeah, I don't have a huge amount of hope for Indiana Jones 5, but we'll see, I suppose.
Well,
the last film was a crock of shit.
Yeah. Well, I just love the South Park lampooning with like, it didn't make any sense then. That was so good.
George Lucas and Steven Spielberg in the arcade.
The way it sends up the accused and deliverance as a metaphor for Parker and Stone's view of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Very imaginative. I think it offended a lot of people, but it's those guys. What do you expect?
Well, here's something that sounds like it might be fun. Beavis and Butthead returning in full-length movie.
Well, I really loved Do America.
Yeah.
That was great fun. Yeah.
So this is two of the 90s most notorious teenage slackers are returning in another feature-length film, 21st century style. Welcome back, Beavis and Butthead. This was tweeted by Comedy Central on Wednesday, adding, we said full length. An attached promotional video features the couch-sitting headbangers not staring at their usual slew of heavy metal music videos, but instead into a camera trying to facilitate the frequent challenges of a modern-day Zoom meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I love the MTV show, and I got a massive kick out of Beavis and Butthead Do America. I used to watch it a lot when I was younger. It was just great fun. Really good voice cast as well. I just thought it was hilarious. So hopefully they can match the caliber of that.
Interestingly, I just scanned the article here, and there's no mention of Mike Judge being involved. They mention him as in he was the creator of the original series, but as no one really knows what's going on with this yet, apart from it's about to start production.
I would hope he has some modicum of involvement.
I'd imagine surely he's got some sort of rights to that, or has that all been scraped? I have no idea.
Oh dear.
But
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, as you said, fingers crossed. Beavis and Butthead could be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
James Bond news. I
thought we weren't discussing this again.
This is different. This is different because we decided to stop discussing James Bond No Time to Die Skyfall 12 because it's just endless delays, setbacks.
Postponed.
It's not very interesting for the audience. This, however, is interesting for the audience. This is earn $1,000 by binge watching every James Bond movie ever made.
How much money, sorry?
$1,000.
That's too low.
Yeah, I would say so, actually. To both acknowledge the 25th film and the long-awaited delay, nerd culture site NerdBear is looking for one James Bond superfan to earn $1,000 by binge-watching all 24 films, or as the site puts it, by enjoying over 51 hours of films, 7 different 007s, and too many martinis. The company is looking to grant the 007 dream job to someone who loves the franchise with a passion and also has good attention to detail, along with an active social media following. I wonder why they're doing this. Some sort of self-promotion, perhaps. Candidates who are this, unfortunately, this rules us out, Liam. Candidates who need to be US citizens or permanent residents at least 18 years old must also be able to watch all 24 films from 1962's Dr. No to 2015's Spectre within a 30-day period. So not much of a challenge, really, but there are some really god-awful Bond films in there. You're not a big fan of the Roger Moore stuff, are you?
I think the Roger Moore stuff is hilarious. For me, the most enjoyable, consummately enjoyable Bond for me personally is Connery. When it comes to Craig, I really enjoy Casino Royale and Skyfall. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean...
Lately, the Lazenby and Dalton and all that stuff, I have essentially no care for it whatsoever.
Apart from the underwater Lotus Esprit. Or isn't it Elan? I can't remember. Remember the underwater car? That was about the only decent feature of... that was a Lazenby one, wasn't it?
Was it a Lazenby one?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know. We're speaking of cars.
We're revealing our ignorance of Bond here. Apologies.
Is it Tomorrow Never Dies or Die Another Day where he has the invisible car?
Let's Die Another Day. Yes, that is definitely the worst Bond film.
Which is the film debut of Rosamund Pike, actually.
Yeah, that is widely regarded to be just the worst Bond film of all time. It's just a shame, really, because Pierce Brosnan is my favourite Bond, but he's definitely not in the best Bond films.
And the villain in Die Another Day is Maggie Smith's kid, the guy from Black Sails.
Oh,
Toby Stevens.
Toby Stevens,
yeah.
Yes. I liked him very much in Black Sails.
That's a very, very, very British villain.
You know what? I watched Die Another Day once when it first came out, and I have never returned. You never see it played anymore, funnily enough.
Yeah, strange that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really, really weird, yeah.
Not even for the uber violent fight between, is it Pike and, is it Halle Berry, I think?
Yeah,
it is
Halle
Halle
Berry's
Berry,
in that one, yeah.
Even that doesn't seem to have replay factor for anyone anymore.
And last article here this week. Fans are furious over Marvel's plans to make the new Blade movie PG-13.
What? PG-13?
PG-13.
How does that work? How would that work?
Yeah, it wasn't one of the brilliant things about Blade as a film, and this stands as one of the few superhero films that both of us really genuinely like.
I love the 1998 Blade.
Yeah, but one of the things that made it work was because it was actually sort of a horror movie.
Yeah.
And being a vampire, blood and gore and people's arms being sliced off and that sort of thing sort of goes with the territory, doesn't it? PG-13. I didn't have high hopes for this anyway because I think Blade doesn't need to be remade, much like Indiana Jones, funnily enough. But to make it a PG-13 and cut the balls off it before it's even started, this has got just every sign of being a write-off.
Is this the one that's supposed to star Mahershala Ali?
Yes, I believe so. He was a good actor, but...
Yeah, when I heard that he was cast as Blade, that actually amped up my anticipation levels. I thought, well, if it's going to be Mahershala Ali, that they could have gone with a lot worse casting choices because the guy is solid. He's really, really good. And maybe they'll do something really cool with it. But PG-13 means no cool shit. Basically.
yeah, essentially. So, you're not going to be able to get your kicks from... Blade's got a fucking sword for a start. How's that going to work for PG-13? It's going to be stormtroopers and droids all over.
Remember the opening of Blade, the 1998 Blade, because me and my dad and my brother used to watch that religiously. It's like one of our favourite films.
I must have seen it about 30 times or something.
Likewise. And I remember when, I think there was one night where my mum wanted to watch a film with my dad, and he was selling it to her, and he said, see what you think of this. And it got to the nightclub sequence where... blood's pouring out the ceiling and there's several people dancing, lapping up blood in a very, very sexualized manner. And she was like, yeah, I don't like this.
But it's a good film. We talked about it last week in the premium, didn't we?
Yeah.
Because we did musicians who feature in films.
Chris Christopherson.
Yeah, and his performance as Whistler really sort of made that film. But I think
it was fabulous.
Another large part of it was the fact that it was genuinely dark and gory and interesting.
Yeah.
And doing PG-13 suggests none of those things will feature in the new Blade film. Obviously, we'll keep an open mind and watch it and review it, but it's got some really big shoes to fill, and I don't think it's going to be up to the task.
I mean, I think Blade actually contains one of Wesley Snipes' greatest performances. I know it's one of his
I know it's that and Demolition Man, isn't it?
Yeah, I know it's an iconic performance, but I really do think that Wesley Snipes is so solid in Blade, and he's believable, and he makes a great hero. And part of the reason that works is because the forces he's contending with are really, really brutally nasty, who engage in very, very gory malevolence. That's why it works. So, no, PG-13 Blade. Shoot, I'd love to be proven astronomically
it'd be
wrong.
Great.
I'd love for me
I'm up for a good Blade film.
Love for me to watch it and enjoy it and go, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah.
But my intuition, I don't know, man. We'll have to wait and see as always.
Cinementalist, still miserable even with new microphones. Anyway, did you expect anything less? Let's get on with some film reviews this week. Liam, what have you got for us?
Well, mentioning the lovely Rosamund Pike, because Die Another Day was her debut film, I watched her latest venture, I Care a Lot. Have you heard of I Care a Lot?
No, I looked it up earlier and it doesn't have a Wikipedia article.
It should do.
Really?
Yeah.
Perhaps my eyes were crossed. I had no idea.
Yes, this is the latest feature from Jay Blakeson, whose feature-length writing and directorial debut, The Disappearance of Alice Creed, is a big favourite of mine. Do you remember, I believe I brought that down our watering hole once? Eddie Marsan and Martin Compson, where they kidnapped Gemma Austin.
Yep, I remember that one.
Really, really great little independent British film, that one. So this is his third effort. Hotly anticipated, released on Netflix in the US and released on Prime Video everywhere else, including the UK. This stars Pike as Marla Grayson. Now, you know how you reviewed Framing Britney Spears and you talked about the phenomenon of conservatorship?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, this touches on that very practice because Marla Grayson is a court-appointed legal guardian in that she, through a network of physicians and managers of assisted living facilities, she goes before a court and engineers emergency hearings to convince the judge that elderly people who are selected through a criteria of they attend such and such physician who Marla knows, so on and so forth, they are no longer capable of looking after themselves. They're physically ailing, they have dementia.
So unlike Britney Spears, these are people suffering with age.
These are these are people who are suffering with age largely in Marla's assertion, because what she does is she manages to wrangle the judge into signing a court order for the elderly person in question to become Marla's ward. She is now their conservator. And when she obtains said order, she moves the senior citizen into a care home. And then she sets about taking control of all their finances, or as conservators do, and selling off all of their personal assets and their homes for her own gain. So Marla Grayson is a horrible piece of shit.
Yes, sounds like.
Yes, and Rosamund Pike, as she did beautifully in Gone Girl, portrays a heartless, no emotion in the face, callous, scary sociopath very, very well. So Marla oversees this network. As I said, there's crooked doctors in it, there's crooked people who run the care homes. They all get a bite of the cake, and Marla keeps the faces of all her wards, or as I would like to call them, victims, which is what they absolutely are, on the wall of her office as she flits carefree and ruthlessly from day to day. So these are from the outset, very, very horrible people. One day, one of her crooked contacts in the healthcare system, a doctor played by the lovely Alicia Witt. She was probably, remember the episode D-Girl from The Sopranos, the ginger-haired one that Chrissy really likes, who works in the film industry, but then she was just using him to get the screenplay.
Yeah, season 1, right?
Yeah. She plays a PCP, a personal care provider, who is just as nasty as Marla and is engaged very much in these shenanigans. And she pitches her once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There is a woman that regularly has appointments with this doctor. One, Jennifer Peterson, played by Diane Wiest, and I referred to her in the write-up I did as Diane, everybody's mum in the 1980s Wiest. Right. She was like, Jason Patrick's mum in The Lost Boys. Show Parenthood. She shows up in absolutely everything.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, Flash, was it Footloose, I think? Yeah. Well, she plays Jennifer Peterson, who is a single retiree living on her own, no known relatives whatsoever, and they have it on good authority that she is sitting on a pile of cash. I mean, an absolutely ludicrous, eye-popping slice of money. And so they think, okay, we've got a real serious, I think they refer to her as the goose that laid the fucking golden egg, or words to that effect. So Marla goes and obtains a court order, shows up at Jennifer's house, gives her the whole spiel. They forcibly remove Jennifer and put her into an assisted living facility with the help of law enforcement and proceed with their usual diabolical shenanigans. But this time, they've picked the wrong person, because Jennifer Peterson is connected with some very, very nasty, dangerous people. All I'll basically say is that these people are mobsters, and they are led by Peter Dinklage.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And Jennifer is a very important person to them, and they latch on to Marla's scheme, what she does for a living, and that she's essentially making another victim out of Jennifer, and they are not fucking happy in the slightest, and they proceed to make Marla's life a living, breathing hell. So, darkly comic thriller, very, very unpleasant premise that, as I mentioned on the blog as well, will turn a lot of people off from the outset. Thing with I Care A Lot, it's 2 hours long. For the first 1 hour, 20 minutes, it's great. Really, really good performance from Pike. Eiza Gonzalez is great in it. Diane Wiest is great in it. Peter Dinklage is great in it. I can't actually fault any performance. Macon Blair of Blue Ruin in Green Room, he turns up as a pissed-off relative of one of Marla's marks. Really, really solid portrayals all across the board. And it builds this really lovely momentum of suspense, nice sort of Coen Brothers-like incidental humour, nice weird quirks to it, and just a very, very dark, I think it was deliciously nasty is what Matt Greenberg of Collider described it as, and for the first 80 minutes it really is that. It flows nicely, it's got a nice level of intrigue, really, really well shot, and there's a great sort of throwback electronic score by Mark Canham. It's really, really on fire for an hour and 20 minutes. For the remaining 40, it all goes to shit.
Oh.
Yeah, it really does. You go from a nice, deft, well-paced, nasty satire where the writing is really on point and it looks like this is gearing up towards a really novel and delicious and original payoff where you think Marla is going to receive some kind of comeuppance that will stay with you, but you know she deserves it because of the horrible things she does for a living. Now, in the last 40 minutes, the film just turns into it basically just turns into a girl power action flick.
Oh, right, okay.
A la Charlie's Angels.
That sounds utterly bizarre.
It is utterly bizarre, and it's extremely disappointing because I was really looking forward to this because I read the premise and I thought that it sounded really, really great. I do strive not to base any of my opinions on reviews, but I think Commode and Bradshaw both gave it rather high ratings, so I thought, well, I do, 9 times out of 10, I trust these fellas' taste, so I think there must be something to it. Really like Pike, obviously a really, really big fan of Dinklage. Was excited to see Diane Weiss again. It just had everything going for it. And for the majority of the film, it goes really, really well. I was really invested. It looks great. It sounds great. The acting's really good. Really, really seamless writing. And then it just takes a fucking nosedive. Just turns into the most rote, lazy, morally confused, clunky action thriller. Because the film seems to be unsure as it presents Marla and her girlfriend Fran as besieged protagonists. I thought, well, hang on, this doesn't make any sense. You've been setting them up as these horrendous shark-like anti-heroines, these very nasty, vicious people for 80 minutes now, and now we're supposed to feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
It's really, really strange, man. Yeah, it takes a complete tonal nosedive. It takes a nosedive in terms of characterization, in terms of characters' motivations and their capabilities. It completely fucks up any thread of sense that it has, and I was super disappointed because this really, really had so much potential, this film. It just couldn't carry that ball to the end. It was so nearly there, and I don't know what the fuck happened. It's like Jay Blakeson wrote most of the script when he was bright and breezy and having like a spring of creativity, and then like the final few pages when he was, I don't know, depressed and on some sort of substance. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't understand how we could fuck this up so badly.
So this is a complete and utter avoid because of that last third, huh?
Oh yeah, I would have to say yes, because you're only going to be disappointed, because I certainly was. You're going to get a great, great build-up that will be suffused with intrigue, that is very well acted, and that does look and sound great, and does have good humour in it, and interesting developments. And it was actually, the writing is novel for most of the screenplay, and then it just goes so bad, so fucking bad. And when the credits started rolling, I was just sitting there going, oh, fuck off. Come on. That is really, you really let me down here.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, I hate to hear you sound so disappointed. What else have you got, matey?
Well, I also mentioned not so long ago about Curzon Home Cinema, didn't I? Well, I was a little bit incorrect.
Still no product placement. They don't pay us.
No, not at all. Well,
if they'd like to chip in,
I think I can see why, because I mistakenly thought that Curzon Home Cinema was akin to stuff like Netflix and Prime Video in that you pay a monthly subscription and you have access to la-di-da-di-da. It's not. You sign up and it's pay per watch.
Oh, okay. What sort of prices?
A bit steep.
Yeah?
Yeah, like usually. Well, if you're a Curzon Cinema, because this is Curzon Home Cinema, if you have a Curzon membership, then you get discounts on the Curzon Home Cinema rentals.
So you have to pay the subscription and that just gets you a discount to their video on demand stuff.
Well, when the cinemas are actually up and running, it also gets you a lot of perks in there as well. But obviously, because you can't go to a Curzon.
It seems a bit much to charge for a streaming service. And then Amazon Prime does this as well, don't they?
Yeah.
And you look up a load of things on Amazon Prime where it's like, oh, Prime has it. You just have to pay extra on top of the Prime subscription that you're already...
Everything on Curzon Home Cinema is pay per watch. You get a lot of stuff with Prime that's on subscription.
Oh, well, fuck that shit then.
Well, fuck that shit then, but I didn't fuck that shit.
How much did you pay?
$9.99.
That's pretty steep.
I know, but it got me the viewing pleasure of County Lines. Now, I was disappointed with I Care A Lot. Now, let me talk about a film where I had the antithesis of those feelings, because this was really something. So this is a film by Henry Blake, Henry Blake is a guy who used to actually be a youth worker, and you know what a pupil referral unit is?
Vaguely.
Sort of like an alternative schooling facility for kids with emotional and behavioural difficulties.
Okay.
Well, this takes place in a pupil referral unit, or a PRU, in East End of London. And this stars Conrad Khan as Tyler. Tyler is a 14-year-old kid who attends one of these referral units because he has a lot of, as I say, emotional and behavioural difficulties. This is a learning centre for troubled kids. He lives at home with his mother, Tony, played by Ashley Maddoquay. I think it's implied that Tony had Tyler when she was quite young, because he's 14 and she only looks to be in her late 20s, early 30s at the very most. So a single mother trying to make ends meet by doing a cleaning job, and Tyler has a little sister as well. So Tyler is miserable going from day to day to this referral unit. He's withdrawn. He doesn't really get on with any of the other kids very well. He gets picked on quite a lot, and he's quiet and dysfunctional and quite sad. Well, one evening, Tyler's on the way home and he stops in a local chicken shop to get some dinner, and some of the lads from the referral unit come in and they start picking on him, and they're like, "Give me your chips, man, give me your chips." And on the table next to them, this big, menacing-looking motherfucker who's clearly like a bit older says to the bullies, like, "What are you doing? Oh, you're just joking, was you?" And roughly manhandles them the fuck out of the shop, turns to Tyler and says, "You all right? Do you want a lift or anything?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Okay, well, like, whatever." And so Tyler just carries on with life as normal. And then he sees the same guy a little while later sitting in his car down the street. And he goes up to me and he says, like, thanks for the other day. Like, and he's like, "Oh, no problem, man. Like, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, you go to the pupil referral, you know?" "Oh, yeah, I went there when I was your age. I fucking hated it." And sort of starts chatting to him and then says to him, "Why don't you, like, long that off for the day and come and hang around with me?" And so he takes him to, well, first he takes him to a JD Sports kind of shop where he lets him buy some new shoes, and then he takes him out for lunch. And Tyler says to him, like, "What do you do for a living?" And this guy, whose name is Simon, by the way, he goes, "Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a guy who works for himself." It's like, "You know, I had to do it when I was your age. My mum didn't have a job, so I had to be the man of the house." Tyler's like, "Well, I'm the man of my house." And he's like, "Well, you should get a job then, innit, mate?" You know, like, jokingly, "Stop being so lazy." So you can probably tell what kind of trajectory this is heading on. Mm-hmm. So Tyler warms to Simon because Simon seems to be nice, if somewhat intimidating guy, and he stuck up for him, and he's very, very unhappy in every other dimension in his life. So he starts to gravitate towards Simon. And another night comes along where he gets in Simon's car, and then the next scene cuts to Tyler kneeling before his bed with an unwrapped bit of cellophane, and in the cellophane are a load of Class A pills. Now, County Lines, the title of this film, refers to a real-life phenomenon that happens in the UK, and it's where troubled kids, delinquent kids, who typically are put into these referral units or are just truant from school, hang around in the wrong places. They are recruited by drug bosses in the major cities to move the traffic away from the big areas into the home counties, into small towns and rural areas. And this is a worsening phenomenon that is making all of the drug lords a shitload of money and is placing tons of kids in some very, very real, scary danger. Now, I absolutely loved this film. As soon as it finished, I tweeted, "Forget all of that kidulthood shit and all that kind of stuff. You want to see a socially realistic depiction of the kind of things that happen to young, disadvantaged kids in Britain who come from a dysfunctional background, who don't really have any prospects, and then even though they might have some people in their life who care about them, they're not really giving them stability." And this is it. I believed every single second of this. Conrad Khan as Tyler, he's a great young actor. He pulls off being a quiet, angry misfit who doesn't know where to turn so well. Harris Dickinson playing Simon he's very, very, I found this guy very scary because he comes across as something of an emotionally reserved older guy who just, you know, doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve, but seems to have some sort of a moral compass, and that he gets pissed off when he sees Tyler getting picked on. But this is somebody who has some very, very nefarious and manipulative cards up his sleeves, and using Tyler, when Tyler begins his journey as one of these county lines drug mules, the kind of situations that he is thrust into. I'm not over-exaggerating it. I was sat there and I felt scared shitless. Because even though I don't come from a broken home and I've never been to a referral unit or anything, but I had plenty of mates back in the day, back in my teenage years, who didn't come from such good backgrounds and who did know a lot of people exactly like this. And incidentally, I would come into contact with some real serious nutters from the kind of southeast London area who would have been on the peripheries of stuff like the drug trade, and they are very, very fucking scary people. And this film replicates that fantastically. I just really, really enjoyed this. It's stark, it's really well written, it's not an easy watch at all, but it just flows so well, and it presents brutal facts of the matter. And in a way that would, if you got two brain cells to rub together, it would not only dissuade you from venturing into any line of work like this if you're someone with a normative psyche, but hopefully it would also inspire some level of sympathy for the kind of kids who get ensnared in stuff like this. Because a lot of the time, it's like when people get groomed into cults or prostitution. A lot of the time, these very, very nasty motherfuckers are looking for someone who is at a low ebb that they can sink their claws into and be faux affable, so they can give the person the confidence to be their little marionette and go away and make them loads of money. Really dark, brutal, unforgiving stuff, but just made with passion, made with authenticity. This is Henry Blake's first feature-length film, and he absolutely knocks it out of the park. I read one negative review of this film, and it was the critic. He accused some of the writing of, he's like, some of the writing's a bit pat. And what he was referring to was the fact that not every single thing in the film is spelt out. It's like, you see Tyler getting into Simon's car, and then in literally the next shot, like, Tyler's looking at a bunch of pills on his bed. It was like, well, it's been heavily implied what's going on. Do you need a long speech about, I'm a drug dealer and I want you to deal my drugs? No, you don't. Like, kind of use your brain.
It expects the audience to keep up.
It does, and I think it does an excellent job of that. And I have no criticism of this film. It's really powerful. It really delivers on its intent. Nothing bad to say about it. It is very, very cinematic, as well as being an important message movie, and I highly recommend it to anyone.
Oh yeah, I'm going to give that a go, my friend.
Unfortunately, it's hidden behind a paywall.
Yeah,
but I definitely intend.
But even though you spent $9.99 on it, would you say it was worth it for that one film?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Because I think otherwise, as a business model, that's a bit rich.
No, I genuinely, hand on heart, I parted $9.99, parted with $9.99. As far as I'm concerned, it was worth every fucking cent of it.
Okay,
and I intend to buy it. I haven't actually looked to see if it's available on DVD or Blu-ray, but if County Lines is available on those formats, I'm definitely buying a copy to own physically.
Well, roughly the same money, right?
For roughly the same money, yeah. So, absolute thumbs up. Absolutely recommended.
Okie dokie then. Well, that brings me on to TV of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And this week, I've got a couple of things to talk about as per usual. First off, this is called The Spy. Heard anything about this?
No, I've never heard of this title.
So this is a English language French espionage streaming television miniseries, to give it its full and correct title. Written and directed by Israeli director Gideon Raff and Max Perry. And it stars Sacha Baron Cohen.
Sacha Baron Cohen?
Yeah, although perhaps not as you've seen him before, because this is far from a comedy. This is Sacha Baron Cohen doing some serious dramatic acting, although there is indeed quite a lot of levity within it.
Sure, yeah.
So this is set in the 60s. We're in Israel. This starts off, Sacha Baron Cohen is playing Eli Cohen. There's spelled Eli Cohen, but I looked it up and the correct pronunciation is Ellie. It's referred to as Ellie constantly throughout the series, so you can fuck off with Andy's fucked off the pronunciation again. This week I got it right. I looked it up and everything. He's playing Eli Cohen, and we first find him working for a grocery store. He's working in the offices upstairs, punching numbers into a machine. And this is interspersed with cuts of somebody shot from behind who is missing their fingernails. and is asked, a Jewish rabbi is brought to this person in their cell, and he's asked to write a letter and sign his name at the bottom, and you only see that this person is missing his fingernails. Cut back to Sacha Baron Cohen as Eli Cohen. Two Cohens together as well, which makes things nice and confusing for both the listener and the reviewer alike. Ellie is not happy with his life. He's got a beautiful wife at home who is newly pregnant. He's having a relatively meager experience of life, and they have sort of bedroom discussions about how he just wants more from his situation. Luckily for him, the Mossad intelligence agency in Israel, where he indeed lives, is looking for a new spy. And they're going through various recommendations, people they might hire. And Eli Cohen's name comes up. And the director of the Mossad spy operation just rules him out immediately because he's applied. And they don't like people who apply. If you apply, that immediately makes you suspicious.
Yeah.
It's like, well, number one, are you working for somebody else? Number two, you're just trying to gain information on the Mossad intelligence agency.
Why have a way to apply?
Well, I guess. Yeah, but it sort of rules you out immediately. Sure. Anyway, the Israeli government is pushed further and further into a corner with this thing until eventually he goes, you know what, I'll give this guy a go. So he does a nice trick, which is Eli Cohen gets a message to meet the potential agency. He has no idea what's going on. There's a potential agency that's asked him to come in for an interview, and they give him the wrong address. And the address is opposite the street from their offices. So the trick here is they look out the window at him facing the wrong way on the street and go, well, basically, if you're going to be a good spy, you need good instincts. And if you have good instincts, you'll immediately know that something's wrong with the fact that this address doesn't exist. And as they're saying this, Eli Cohen turns around and looks up at the window where they're standing from. He has passed the initial test. So he begins to train with the Mossad intelligence agency to become a spy and is posted to Syria. And I should mention at this point, this is all based on a true story. Eli Cohen was in fact a famous spy for the Israeli government in the 60s, and he did indeed infiltrate the Syrian government at quite a high level. And that's where I'm going to leave it. All good with the setup on that?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So this is a really, really interesting show. For a start, it's doing really interesting things with its color palette. Everything in Israel is really bleached out to the point of being very nearly black and white. It's a very cool stylistic choice, whereas everything in Syria, when Eli Cohen eventually gets there, is much more sort of warm oranges and yellow dust and that sort of thing, which gives it a nice, when it's cutting back between Israel and what's going on back home with his wife and her bringing up a kid by herself and cutting back to him in Syria, there's a nice distinction made between the color palette shifts that I really, really loved. The real standout thing with this piece is Sacha Baron Cohen's performance. He's got the Borat mustache. Let's get that out of the way immediately, okay?
Okay.
Now, there's something immediately funny about Sacha Baron Cohen with the Borat mustache, because everyone's got that.
Inevitable.
Everyone's got that association, yeah. But what he's doing here is some real. What I want to say here is real proper acting, but that's kind of wrong because, as everybody knows, comedy is one of the hardest forms of acting to do.
100%,
and Sacha Baron Cohen is an absolute master of it. So to say it's real proper acting is a bit of a misnomer, but to see the emotional range and depth and complexity that he's capable of inside this very complex role, with nice moments of levity as well, is really outstanding. I mean, absolutely outstanding. This is Sacha Baron Cohen as you've probably not seen him before. What this reveals is something that I think most of us knew already, but it's nice to see proof of it, is that he's such a consummate actor and a consummate professional, and he's capable of doing a really naturalistic, believable performance. I mean, obviously the fact that he's a spy, a hell of a lot of paranoia is involved. And this isn't James Bond spying either. This is much more John Le Carre, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy stuff.
Unglamorized spying.
Yeah, it's stealing information, always being almost at the edge of being caught. We're in the 60s, so the technology they had back then wasn't great. He's got a little Morse code machine. Anytime he wants to bug something, he has to run a physical cable across to it. He's constantly being hounded by Syrian agents who are pretty sure there's something dodgy going on with him, although they can't quite figure out what. And I find that sort of world far more compelling than the James Bond stuff. Not to knock James Bond stuff too hard. We started out this podcast by having a go at James Bond. They're fun films. Yeah, and there's some really, really good ones out there. And you mentioned Skyfall and Casino Royale are brilliant. Obviously, we can go back through the back catalogue of Bond and find some really great stuff in there as well. But it's such a super fictionalized version of what a spy would actually do. And that's where the fun lies in James Bond. This is much more the John Le Carre, proper spying, tense, thrilling, paranoia-inducing stuff. And it does it really, really expertly. There's a nice little side plot as well in that Ellie's wife back home, she's struggling with the fact that she's been left to raise a kid by herself. Ellie's away for sometimes months, potentially years at a time. And Ellie's boss is constantly turning up at the flat because he starts off being genuinely worried about her being left by herself, that she might give the game away, that she might complain or something like that. And he actually starts to form an attachment towards her. So there's stuff going on at home as well. This is all beautifully paced in the way that's intercut. It never loses its thread or its pacing. It's a really intriguing piece of work. I'm sure a few people listening will be aware of what happened to Ellie Cohen. And obviously, it's not much of a leap to suggest that the guy at the very start with no fingernails may in fact be him. The show sort of gives that away within the first 5 minutes of the episode, so I don't feel too bad about talking about that on the podcast. It is revealed that he's caught and tortured in a very nasty way. Even knowing the end from the beginning, though, you still want to chase the tail down, and it is entirely based not just on great direction and great writing, which it definitely has, but it's Sacha Baron Cohen's performance. So I really, really encourage our listeners to check this out because it's him performing in a way you haven't seen him perform before. And if anything, he's better at serious acting than he is at comedy, and I think he's an extreme comedy talent.
Well, I mean, you've got me sold because ever since Ali G came around, I followed him as Ali G. Went to see the first Borat film, even went to see the Bruno, which wasn't as good, but always really loved Sacha Baron Cohen, thought he was hilarious. Loved, was it Who is America? Mm-hmm. That was really, really enjoyable. I think he's a really, really funny guy. So the fact that this is him in a 180 fashion doing something very serious and dramatic, I'm really interested in.
And it's a complex character that he's playing because this is a guy that is leading a double life. So really he's playing two characters in one person. And actually that is one of the themes of the show, is that when you go into deep cover for potentially years at a time, how do you come back and go back to a family life? How do you, at points he loses who he is. So, and he talks about, as a character going, how do I make that distinction? How can I simply go off and be this highfalutin Arab businessman and then come back home and be Eli, the Israeli guy who's nice to his wife and his new kids? How do you create that dichotomy? How do you keep those lines level? There's a nice sequence. Every time he has to go into deep cover, he visits an older couple who are working for the Mossad spy agency, and they've got a room with two wardrobes in it. And when you walk in that room, you take off all of your clothes that you're wearing as Eli, the Israeli guy, put them away, and then you put on the clothes of his alter ego. And so that's like the switch over. It's almost like the Superman telephone box.
Right,
thing.
yeah.
And so it constantly plays with that idea as well, that you really do have to, in order to be successful in this game, you have to become two different people at once. And so Sacha Baron Cohen's actually got two characters to play in a weird way. And the depth and range that he shows is really genuinely impressive. I highly encourage people to just watch him do what he does because it's massively accomplished.
Looking forward to it. Damn.
Second thing I want to talk about this week is something that my girlfriend has been laughing at me for all day because she's like, how the hell are you going to review that? And so here is my attempt, dear Cinementalist listeners, because this is called Behind Her Eyes. And this is brand new on Netflix. Okay, so I'm going to give you as much setup as I can on this, okay? Here we go. I'm so nervous about this one because it'd be so easy to drop something in. Here we go. So we start off with Louise Bardsley, who's in her flat in London. She's played by Simona Brown, and she is getting ready for a night out on the town with one of her friends. The babysitter's over looking after her small son. She's getting ready. She's trying out different dresses in the mirror. Babysitter says, go out, have a nice time, enjoy yourself. Don't worry about being back too late. So she goes off to this bar in London, and her friend stands her up. She's sitting there drinking a glass of wine, checks her phone, friend says, really sorry, can't make it tonight. So she kind of sighs and huffs. She's put all this effort into getting ready. As she's leaving the bar, she knocks into Tom Bateman, who's playing Dr. David Ferguson, and knocks his whiskey all over him. She apologizes, buys him another drink, and as these things tend to go in fictional media, they get talking and they really hit it off.
Of course they do.
They do, yeah. So cut to a scene later in the evening. They're laughing, they're drinking, they're having a nice time, and there's an obvious mutual attraction between them. They go to leave the bar, are standing out in the street. He's got to go one way, she's got to go the other, and they end up kissing. And as they kiss, he suddenly pulls away and goes, shit, like, I can't do this. I really can't do this. And runs off in the opposite direction. Louise is understandably confused and disappointed by this, but goes back to her flat. We cut to the next day, and Louise is going into work as a receptionist at a psychiatrist's office. And who does the new psychiatrist at the office happen to be? Why, it's Dr. David Ferguson, played by Tom Bateman, who is there with his wife being introduced by one of the other psychiatrists to his new office. She is now his receptionist. As soon as she sees the backs of their heads and recognizes this is the guy that she kissed the other night and that must be his wife, she hides in the bathroom so that nobody sees her. So they have a bit of an awkward moment when David realizes that she's the woman that he kissed the other night. Obviously, he's married. He doesn't want that infidelity to be made public. She says, look, it's fine. We didn't really do anything. We just had a nice time. Forget about it. I want to keep things professional. I'm not going to tell your wife. Everything's cool. So life carries on. He is now the new psychiatrist at the office, and she is working quite happily as his receptionist. She has a day off at one point, and she is walking around the corner on her way to do something of absolutely no note whatsoever when she bumps into a woman who also happens to be walking around the same corner, which is, of course, Dr. David Ferguson's wife. It's Adele Campbell, played by Eve Hewson, and knocks her over in the street. She stands up, and Louise goes, "Oh my God, it's you." And Adele realizes that this must be David's new secretary. So they have a bit of a chat. Louise tries to get away. And Adele says, no. We've just moved to the area. I don't have any friends around here. Would you come with me to a coffee shop? So Louise is now trapped in a coffee shop with this woman who she's had an infidelity with her husband. And they have a very awkward conversation. And Adele's a bit weird. She comes on a bit too strong. She keeps mentioning the fact that she's got no friends, wants to swap numbers, and is generally a little bit creepy and a little bit too much. So Louise is trying desperately to get away, but they do end up swapping numbers. As the show moves forward, Louise and Dr. David Ferguson rekindle their affair. And also Louise is trapped into this sort of one-sided at the start, but eventually becomes a genuine friendship between her and Adele. So there's this weird tryst going on that she's fucking the husband and also friends with the wife.
Okay.
So you're all up to date with that, okay?
Uh-huh.
Does this sound really boring so far?
It sounds like shit.
Yes. Okay. Here's where I run into trouble as a reviewer, because this show does something so bizarre halfway through its 6-episode run that I can't mention on the podcast. I can't tell you what it is. All I can say is that Adele has a bit of a past. She met David when they were younger. She had a wealthy family who ran an estate. David was the son of one of the farmhands on the estate. There was a fire that killed her parents, and David pulled her from the flames, and that's how they eventually had a relationship and became husband and wife. It's also revealed that because of the traumatic event of the fire, Adele spent some time in an institution. This is shown through flashback, and she had a friend in the institution called Rob, who was played by Robert Armeo, and he was a Scottish junkie, and they happened to hit it off in the institution. So it's constantly shown through flashback and you go, okay, so what's the significance of this friend in the background? There's an element of night terrors involved as well. Louise suffers from night terrors, and Adele reveals that she used to suffer from night terrors as well. And she starts to teach her techniques that Rob gave her about lucid dreaming. And so this ties in to the plot as well. So there are occasional sort of nightmare sequences where Louise is running down sort of horror house corridors with flames burning up around her, and she sees her child caught in the flames and things like that. There's this constant sort of hallucinogenic horror thing. There's also some shots where the camera is sort of on the ceiling in like the 3/4 of the room, and the camera floats around with an ominous green glow on it. So you start to get a feeling that perhaps there might be a supernatural element involved. I could neither confirm nor deny on the podcast, of course. So it does this bizarre flip in the middle. And then right at the very end, in the last 5 minutes, and I know this is a bit of a giveaway for some people, but I have to say it because otherwise no one's going to watch it based on this review. Right in the last 5 minutes, it does one more flip that makes you want to watch the entire thing from the start again. There's a lot more going on to these characters than is revealed. And it saves it until the very last minute in a way that is both impressive and annoying at the same time. Because you go, well, if you got that out a bit sooner, I would have been a bit more compelled to watch it in the first place. We often talk about things being slow burn. This is really slow at points. I mean, really, really
How many episodes
slow.
is this?
6.
And you watched it with your good lady?
I did, yes.
Okay, now I'm starting to understand her rhetorical question to you about how the fuck are you going to.
I've realised this review is a bit of a mess because how the hell am I supposed to talk about the fact that there is even saying there's a big reveal is too much for some people, but I have to. Because otherwise I wouldn't be talking about the show. I just wonder how many people are going to watch this and get all the way to the end in order to see the clever reveal. The clever reveal is indeed very, very clever, but boy, do you have to sit through a lot of character stuff to get there. And look, there's nothing wrong with the performances. Simona Brown as Louise, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Eve Hewson as Adele as well, who's constantly creepy and a bit disassociated. It's called Behind Her Eyes, okay? So she's this wife, there's like a Jane Eyre analogy going on that she's a little bit crazy and she's being kept in the background by Dr. David, who seems charming, but is he really? There's a lot of intrigue going on there. It just takes forever to get to the interesting bit. But if you put in these 6 fucking hours to get to the interesting bit, the payoff is actually kind of worth it.
So you say it starts getting interesting around the halfway mark?
A semi-interesting. And you think, oh, okay, so that's the gimmick underneath the show that we're interested in, but it's not. There's another one. And I feel really bad about saying there's another one underneath because then people will wait for it. But otherwise, you're just not going to finish it. And I highly recommend you do because it's a really, really clever little twist. And it's a clever little backflip of the narrative. And it does make you want to go and watch it again. But there's a lot of threesome romantic tryst going on that actually isn't that interesting. I was looking up the other critics' reviews earlier, and this has been slated by quite a few of the professional critics, and I can kind of see why. It's not that it's bad, it's that it saves its reveal too late, and that's a shame because it's really worth getting there. So all I can really say with this is if this sounds interesting to you and you want to see what I'm talking about, give the first couple of episodes a go, and if you feel like you're missing something, well, you are, but you decided that it's such a wishy-washy review. I know it's a bit all over the place, but it's almost impossible to describe why this is worth watching. All I'll say is that if you do get to the end, there is a big payoff.
Did your better half comprehensively enjoy it?
Yeah.
Because
I think she's got more time for 3 characters in a romantic tryst than I do.
To me, that just sounds really, really boring.
Yeah,
so, I'm prepared to make the slog if you...
It kind of is, but the reveal makes it very much not boring. And is that well-paced in terms of narrative? No, I don't think so. I think really the reveal should have been in episode 5, and episode 6 is getting your head around it. Whereas really you need to get to the last 5 minutes of this show to discover what it's about. And then it becomes, oh, that's actually very, very clever. But it's too late in the game. And it reminded me of M. Night Shyamalan and the saving the reveal for the last minute. It just makes you throw your hands up and go, well, maybe that's interesting, but you haven't kept my attention otherwise. So it's a hard one. It's a difficult one. But like I said, watch the first couple of episodes and see what you think. If it is grabbing you in the right way, there is a gold at the end of the tunnel waiting for you.
I mean, just to clarify, I don't actually have anything whatsoever against, examinations of clandestine relationships or affairs or romantic entanglements in and of themselves. But for something to be about that and literally nothing else really doesn't do anything for my curiosity. So the fact that there seems to be a whole other series of layers.
An entire layer.
From what you're saying, quite mental layers.
Yes, absolutely.
Then, yeah, I think I might have to check this out as well.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I enjoyed it, but it's a difficult recommendation, for sure.
Well, my curiosity is piqued.
Okay, then, let's finish off, as we always do, with some trivia. Of course, I couldn't do a review on The Spy without going into spy and espionage trivia, because this is a hell of a rich subject, as you would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And also on our premium podcast this week, we're going to talk about films involving spies and espionage as well. And I've got even more trivia for that. So that's a bit of an incentive for somebody to pay for the podcast at the very least.
All the spies, spying.
But I have actually divided it so both halves are interesting. It's very tempting to load the free one with stuff that isn't interesting. But I've managed, there's so much of this stuff, I managed to do both, okay? So let's have some spy espionage trivia to finish out with.
Sweet.
A CIA project in the 1960s called Acoustic Kitty tried to use a cat as a listening device to spy on the Soviets. A microphone was installed in a cat's ear canal with a radio transmitter in the base of its skull, and the feline was released near a meeting of 2 men in a park outside the Soviet compound in Washington. Any cat owner could have predicted failure. The feline, of course, simply ran away. The CIA abandoned the project after spending about $15 million.
Oh, that hurts. That
$15 million on a microphone on a cat that ran off at the first available opportunity. James Stockdale, presidential candidate Ross Perot's running mate in 1992, spent part of the Vietnam War as a prisoner at the so-called Hanoi Hilton. But Stockdale wasn't just a POW. He was also a spy who communicated with US intelligence through one of the oldest tricks in espionage, invisible ink. His wife sent the POW a photo of a woman bathing in the ocean, along with a letter saying Stockdale's mother-in-law was having a good soak. The woman pictured was not his mother-in-law, who hated to swim, so he knew something was up. Stockdale soaked the photo in urine and found a message saying that his wife's letter could be used as a sort of carbon paper, allowing him to write invisible messages on his own letters back to her. Through that method, he was able to give US intelligence the names of other POWs in the camp.
Holy shit. That's pretty cute.
He could have ignored those signs entirely, couldn't he?
What the fuck is this weird shit?
Here's a common myth about spies. It's from a BBC News article. One of them is working for MI6, the Foreign Intelligence Service, is like being James Bond. We get that a lot, says Kate, who's worked for MI6 or the Secret Intelligence Service for 10 years. Obviously, we like it a bit as well because it's quite glamorous. No, we don't all get an Aston Martin or a speedboat or any other funky form of transport. You'll more often see us on a bus or a tube than anything like that. John has spent 15 years with MI6, including working abroad. Those myths about carrying guns, having your martinis, etc. just don't apply, he says. But there's one aspect the films do get right. We do actually have a Q. Q is actually a real thing, he says, referencing the head of Research and Development Division in the Bond films. We have some brilliant technologists that supply us with all kinds of gadgets that we use. Only our stuff is better than Bond's.
Oh.
Both intriguing and slightly terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, that would be accurate, yeah.
I like this one. Nice, simple bit of logic, this. Russia used an incredibly subtle trick to identify hundreds of spies. Americans would use good quality rust-proof staples on their documents, whereas Russians used cheap staples that left a rust stain behind. I love that. It's just simplicity itself, isn't it? Earl Pitts spied for the Russians while working for the FBI in the 80s and 90s. The FBI set up a sting operation to catch him, but Pitts inadvertently thwarted their attempt by forgetting where to meet his contact. He wandered around the wrong part of the New York Public Library for half an hour before giving up and leaving.
Fucking useless, man.
Absolutely
what
useless.
The hell what is wrong with
Not
him?
useless because he wasn't tagged. He just happened to go to the wrong bit of the library that they told him to go to.
Well, okay, so he functionally did his job well, but not in any conscious manner.
I kind of like him. Good old Earl Pitts. Even when he's wrong, he's right. North Korean spies stationed abroad have to receive training on how to shop in supermarkets, use credit cards, and visit clubs, as these amenities are not commonplace in North Korea.
I didn't know there were such a thing as amenities in North Korea.
Well, yeah. I guess if you're in Pyongyang or whatever, they've got stuff. But as far as we're aware, I believe the rest of the country just is like rural farmland.
Yeah.
So if you're recruited, then you need to be shown how to not look like someone from North Korea when you go to a Western country. Driving while drunk destroyed the Soviet spy network in the UK. After being arrested in London in 1971, Oleg Lealin panicked and offered the names of every Russian spy in the country. The UK government expelled 105 people immediately, and the USSR spy network in Britain never recovered.
So whatever happened to Oleg Lealin?
I don't know. I imagine he got some sort of clemency for giving up every single Russian spy in the country.
Well, because if he was sent back to the USSR, then I'd imagine something deeply unpleasant.
That's a bit of a raw deal, isn't it? Yeah, for sure. The word Lollapalooza was used by American soldiers in the Pacific to identify Japanese spies who would mispronounce it. It was used because even Japanese spies that have had extensive English training would likely not have practiced saying this word.
It's one of those silly Anglophonic words that we have.
And I shouldn't really laugh because I'm the man who mispronounces something every fucking week.
Well, exactly,
So there you go, you know. I imagine my Japanese pronunciation is pretty fucking shit.
Yeah, you and me both, mate.
When you know you're being tracked, you have to get creative. One CIA officer who had a rendezvous in Moscow arranged a fake birthday party. He and his driver bought a fake birthday cake in the car with them, knowing the KGB were tailing them. The car took a sharp turn to elude their trackers. The CIA officer jumped out, and a silhouette popped out of the cake so it would look like he was still in the car. That sounds like the bit in Only Fools and Horses with the blow up dolls in the fucking back, right? Do you think that's where they got the idea from? Amazing,
We got some half-price cracked ice.
In 1917, Germans built a 25-foot tall, armour-plated fake tree and stationed a soldier in it for months to spy on Allied artillery positions. To sneak the tree in place, the Germans had to cut down and replace a real tree while artillery was firing, so Allied forces wouldn't hear the axes. Even after taking the German position, Allied soldiers didn't notice it wasn't a real tree for 7 months.
What?
There's a fake tree with a German soldier in it inside your base for 7 months, and no one took a piss against the tree. No one said, "Hang on a minute, that one's a slightly different colour to the others." I can't imagine it was that good a fake tree. Not in 1917, surely.
Maybe just really, really. It's either a shit hot tree or really stupid. Really stupid.
I guess when you're at war, you've got other stuff to think about. No one's really looking at the tree.
Yes, so. That's actually that's fair enough. So I'll retract that. Not stupid, just under a burden. Under a burden. So easy mistake to make. Easy thing to not notice.
I like these two here. I've got a couple of funny ones. Chevalier Dion was a French spy, diplomat, and lady-in-waiting who infiltrated the court of Empress Elizabeth of Russia. It was only after her death in 1810 that it was discovered she was, in fact, a man.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because chevalier is French for cavalier.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's
a French word for knight as well, like horse rider.
Yeah. Well, that's rather cavalier behaviour there.
Hey, very, very good.
So, kind of risk.
Now we've got good gear, I feel like we should have a laugh track button in the background.
Well, not for that, because that was actually quite crap. I was just thinking on my feet to try, think of something that I would find mildly amusing. But...
Wouldn't it be horrible if we got all the amazing audio gear and then all of a sudden our content just turned terrible? No jokes were funny anymore. Yeah. No reviews were interesting.
It's unfolding before our eyes.
How about this one? Desperate times call for desperate measures. The CIA designed a tiny anal toolkit which a spy could hide in their posterior in case of trouble. Once captured, the spy would simply poop out the toolkit and make their escape.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Anal toolkit.
Yes,
I love that sequence of words.
Yeah, the CIA designed a tiny anal toolkit is very, very satisfying to say.
Did it have a specific name?
I have no idea. The Up Your Bum 4000. Not a clue. Close. Yeah. And my last one here. Even when a mission goes off without a hitch, spies don't always get what they expected. When the KGB showed Indonesian President Sukarno a video of him having an orgy with several beautiful Soviet spies, they thought they were blackmailing him. Instead, he liked the tape so much, he asked for copies. Man, my dick looks great in this video.
Oh, man, that's fantastic.
Look at me go.
That's a brilliant story.
Surely a movie is forthcoming.
Yeah, it's got to be done. It absolutely has to be done.
Okie dokie. Well, that brings us to the end of our free podcast this week. Thank you very much for listening. We're off to go and record the premium content. As we said earlier, we're going to carry on with doing spies and espionage in film and TV forms. We'll have a nice chat about those. And I've got more spy trivia at the end as well, if you'd like a bit more of that. If you are interested in our premium content, please do check out cinementalist.com for a link to our Patreon page, or you can type it into Google. And the first result, I believe, is our link to our Patreon stuff.
Yeah.
You'll also find a link on cinementalist.com for the Wacko Jacko blog, and you can follow Cinementalist on Twitter at Cinementalcast, and you can follow Liam at...
I'm Liam at the movies at Wacko Jacko's Flicks.
Excellent. So yeah, please do give us a follow for up-to-date Cinementalist stuff and news. Anything else to add, my friend?
As always, guys, thank you so much for listening. Really hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll look forward to you tuning in again next week.
Yeah, well, hopefully the premium stuff.
Yes, yeah. Please, it's good.
We need to pay off these microphones somehow.
I promise, just take a listen. We're good, man. We're good to you guys.
Most of the time. Yeah, no, actually, no, all the time. All the time we're good. Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you very much. See you next week.